On a grand starship floating among the stars, the royal family of the Galaxians prepared for an important meeting. The ship was massive, filled with shining lights and luxurious decorations. The walls sparkled and the floors glimmered. Dignitaries from different planets gathered in the grand hall, all eager to see the new human ambassador. John, the human ambassador from Earth, stepped onto the ship with a mix of excitement and nerves. He was not like the powerful aliens around him. He was shorter with an average build, and he felt out of place among such impressive beings. His heart raced as he walked through the hall, and whispers followed him. The royal family was a sight to behold. The king, tall and regal with bright purple skin, sat on a grand throne. Beside him were his two daughters, both stunning with their long, flowing hair and sharp features. They were dressed in elegant gowns made of shimmering fabric that changed colors with their movements. As John approached, their eyes glimmered with curiosity and amusement. When John finally stood before them, the king leaned forward, a smirk on his face. "So, this is the mighty human ambassador?" he boomed, his voice echoing in the hall. Laughter erupted from the royal family and their guests. "What a weak little creature. Surely you will entertain us today." The laughter felt like 1,000 tiny needles piercing John's skin. He forced a smile, determined to hold his ground. "I am honored to be here," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "I come in peace and hope for friendship between our worlds." The aliens continued to chuckle, shaking their heads. The princesses exchanged glances, clearly enjoying the show. One of them, with bright green skin and sparkling blue eyes, leaned forward. "Peace? What can you possibly offer us, little human? Your kind is known for being weak and helpless." Her words cut through the air, sharp and cruel. John felt a flush of anger rise in his chest. He was not weak. He had fought against challenges on Earth. But in this moment, he could only hold his tongue. He knew that showing anger would only give them more reasons to mock him. Instead, he stood tall, trying to project confidence despite their laughter. "Strength comes in many forms," he said quietly, hoping they would understand. The king, still amused, waved a hand dismissively. "Let us see if this human can do more than talk," he declared. "We will hold a contest tomorrow. Let the strongest among us compete, and we will show you how truly superior we are." The crowd cheered at the thought of a contest. John's heart sank, but he nodded. "I accept your challenge," he replied, trying to sound brave. Deep down, he felt small and insignificant. But he was determined to prove himself. As the evening wore on, the guests mingled and feasted. John stood apart, observing the festivities. The aliens danced and laughed, but he felt a sense of loneliness wash over him. The laughter from the royal family still echoed in his ears. It was a painful reminder of how different he was. Suddenly, an alien approached him. This one was smaller than the others, with vibrant orange skin and big, curious eyes. "Why do they laugh at you?" the alien asked, tilting its head. "You are brave to accept their challenge." John sighed, grateful for the kindness. "They see me as weak because I am human," he explained. "But I want to show them that humans can be strong, too." The little alien nodded. "I believe in you. You have a spark that they do not see yet. Show them your strength tomorrow." Feeling encouraged, John thanked the alien for its support. Perhaps he could turn the mockery into something more. As he prepared to face the challenge ahead, he thought about how to surprise them. He would not let their laughter define him. With a plan forming in his mind, he vowed to prove that even the weakest-looking beings could hold great power. That night, John lay in his quarters, staring at the ceiling. The laughter of the royal family haunted him, but he knew he had to focus on what lay ahead. Tomorrow would be his chance to show the galaxy what a human could do, and he would not back down. The stars outside his window twinkled brightly, like a million promises of hope, and he felt a surge of determination. He would rise above their mockery and show them his true strength. The next morning, the grand hall of the Galaxian starship buzzed with excitement. Aliens from different planets gathered to witness the contest. Colorful banners hung from the walls, and the air was thick with anticipation. The royal family sat on their thrones looking confident and smug. They believed they would easily defeat the weak human ambassador, John. The arena was set up with a large holographic board displaying a game called Galactic Chess. The rules were simple but challenging. Each player had an army of pieces, and they had to outsmart their opponent to capture the king. The game required strategy, foresight, and a deep understanding of the moves ahead. As the game began, John focused on the board, recalling his experiences playing chess back on Earth. He had always enjoyed strategy games, and now he needed to put his knowledge to the test. Zarkon moved his pieces swiftly, displaying confidence and power with each move. The crowd roared in approval, clearly rooting for their champion. John took a deep breath, analyzing the board carefully. Zarkon had a strong start, but John remained calm. He thought about each piece, considering their strengths and weaknesses. He moved his pieces slowly, allowing the crowd to see his thoughtful approach. Some began to murmur, wondering if the human could keep up with Zarkon's aggressive style. With each turn, John started to surprise Zarkon. He set clever traps and maneuvered his pieces in unexpected ways. The audience gasped as John captured one of Zarkon's powerful pieces. What is happening? Zarkon thought, his confidence wavering. He had never faced a player like this before. John continued to play cautiously, knowing that one wrong move could lead to disaster. The game progressed and Zarkon began to sweat. His moves became more frantic, trying to regain control of the board. But John remained focused, seizing every opportunity. The once laughing crowd was now silent, their eyes wide with shock and interest. Finally, after a tense battle of minds, the moment came. John saw a chance to capture Zarkon's king. With a steady hand, he moved his piece into position. The crowd held its breath. "Checkmate!" he declared, a triumphant smile spreading across his face. Zarkon's eyes widened in disbelief. "No! This cannot be!" he shouted, slamming his fist on the table. The audience erupted into cheers and applause for John. He had turned the tables in a way no one expected. The king's face was a mixture of anger and confusion. He had underestimated the human ambassador in more ways than one. As John stood up, he felt a surge of pride. He had not only won the contest, but had also gained respect from the very beings who had mocked him. The royal family exchanged glances, their laughter from the previous day now replaced with a new understanding. "Perhaps we misjudged you, human," the king finally spoke, his tone more serious. "You have shown great strength and skill. Maybe it is time we look beyond our differences." John nodded, still catching his breath. "I believe we can learn from each other," he replied, feeling hopeful. The crowd began to chant his name, celebrating his unexpected victory. He had done more than compete. He had shown the galaxy that humans were not to be underestimated. The royal family now had to face the truth. The weak little human was not so weak after all. John had transformed their laughter into respect, proving that courage and intelligence could change everything. With new allies in the room, John realized that this was only the beginning. Together, they could forge a bond that would change the fate of their worlds. The cheers echoed through the grand hall as John basked in his unexpected victory. The aliens who had once laughed at him now clapped and shouted his name. It was a surreal moment, but amidst the celebration, not everyone was pleased. Zarkon, still reeling from his defeat, stood with a scowl on his face, his pride wounded. He could not let a human outsmart him, and deep down he felt an anger brewing. As the crowd dispersed, John approached Zarkon, extending his hand in friendship. It was a great match. "You played well," John said, trying to show goodwill. But Zarkon's eyes flashed with rage, and he turned his back, refusing to acknowledge the human. The king noticed the tension and stepped in. "We must embrace this moment, Zarkon. We have learned much from this human. It is time to accept our differences and work together," he urged. But Zarkon only sneered, his anger boiling just below the surface. He could not accept that a mere human could best him in front of their entire society. The next day, the atmosphere in the palace shifted. Zarkon gathered his closest allies, whispering in the shadows. "This human has humiliated us. He thinks he can just walk in and take our respect. We must show him he is not one of us." His words ignited the flames of dissent among his followers, who nodded in agreement. Meanwhile, John prepared for a meeting with the Galaxian Council. He felt hopeful about the future, believing that the friendship between their worlds could flourish. But as he entered the meeting room, he sensed a change in the air. The once welcoming atmosphere now felt cold and tense. The council members were divided. Some were ready to embrace John as an ally, while others, influenced by Zarkon, were ready to push back. "You may have won the games, human," one elder said, his voice sharp. "But you must remember our traditions run deep. We do not easily accept outsiders." John listened, his heart pounding. He understood that not everyone would welcome him with open arms. "I respect your traditions, and I am here to learn," he replied, trying to convey his sincerity. But the elder just shook his head, unimpressed. As the meeting continued, Zarkon's supporters began to speak out. "This human is not like us. He doesn't belong in our council! We should challenge him again, show him our true strength," they shouted in anger, fueled by Zarkon's resentment. The atmosphere turned hostile, and John felt a wave of unease wash over him. He had come here to build bridges, not barriers. "I came to work together, not to fight," he said, raising his voice to be heard above the commotion. "I want to help your people, not harm them." But his words fell on deaf ears. Zarkon stood up, his face twisted in fury. "Enough of this! You think you can win our hearts with games? Let's see how you fare in a true battle!" He challenged John, his voice booming in the chamber. Gasps filled the room. The council members looked between Zarkon and John, unsure of how to respond. John's heart raced. He had come to promote peace, but now he was being dragged into conflict. "A battle? That's not what I want," he protested, but Zarkon was relentless. "Do you accept my challenge, human?" Zarkon pressed, his eyes gleaming with hostility. John hesitated, weighing his options. He could refuse and be seen as cowardly, or he could accept and risk everything he had worked for. Finally, with a deep breath, John straightened his shoulders. "I accept your challenge, Zarkon," he said, his voice steady. "But let it be known I do not fight for glory or pride. I fight to prove that we can coexist, not just survive." The council erupted into chaos, some cheering for Zarkon, others expressing concern for John. The king tried to regain control. "We will hold this battle tomorrow in the arena. It will be a test not just of strength but of our future." As John left the meeting, he felt a mixture of fear and determination. He had no idea what awaited him in the arena, but he knew he had to stand his ground. The laughter had turned into backlash, and he was about to face the consequences of challenging a proud warrior in a world that had underestimated him. The stakes were higher than ever, but John was ready. He believed in the potential for peace between their worlds, even if it meant fighting for it. He would turn this challenge into an opportunity to show that humanity could not only compete, but also thrive in the galaxy. Tomorrow would be a turning point, one way or another. The day of the final showdown arrived, and the arena buzzed with excitement. John stood at the entrance, his heart pounding in his chest. He had never been in a fight like this before. The cheers and chants of the crowd echoed around him, a mix of alien voices calling for their champion, Zarkon. The atmosphere felt electric, and John knew he had to be at his best. As John stepped into the arena, he felt the eyes of thousands upon him. The grand space was filled with towering alien spectators, all eager to see the clash between the human and their fierce warrior. Zarkon stood on the opposite side, his muscles rippling beneath his armor, a fierce glare fixed on John. He looked ready to unleash all his rage and frustration. The king stood at the center, raising his hand for silence. "Today we witness a battle not just of strength but of courage and spirit," he proclaimed. "May the best warrior win." With a wave of his hand, the battle began. John moved carefully, his training kicking in. He had prepared for this moment, but he couldn't shake off the weight of the crowd's expectations. Zarkon charged at him, a blur of speed and power. John barely had time to react as Zarkon swung a massive fist toward him. He dodged just in time, feeling the wind from the punch brush past him. Zarkon growled in frustration. "You're quicker than I thought, human!" He lunged again, this time with a series of rapid strikes. John ducked and weaved, his heart racing. He focused on staying light on his feet, remembering his training. He had to avoid Zarkon's strength and find an opening. The crowd was on the edge of their seats, their cheers mixing with the sounds of fists striking and feet pounding against the ground. John felt the pressure, but he was determined not to let fear control him. He spotted a gap in Zarkon's defense and took his chance. With all his might, he delivered a swift kick to Zarkon's side. The impact surprised Zarkon, who stumbled back, eyes wide with shock. The crowd gasped. John had landed a hit. The realization that he could compete filled him with confidence. Zarkon regained his footing, anger flashing in his eyes. "You will pay for that!" he shouted, charging again. As Zarkon approached, John remembered his strategy. He didn't have to fight like a brute. He could use his agility and wits. He dodged Zarkon's punches, moving in and out like a shadow. Each time Zarkon attacked, John slipped away, landing quick jabs when he could. The crowd roared in excitement, amazed at the human's skill. John could see a shift in their attitudes. The laughter and mockery from before had turned to shouts of encouragement. "Go, human!" They cheered, their respect growing by the moment. But Zarkon was relentless. He unleashed a powerful swing aimed directly at John. John ducked just in time, feeling the rush of air from the missed punch. He knew he had to end this soon. Gathering all his strength, he launched himself forward, surprising Zarkon with a fierce kick to the chest. Zarkon fell back, hitting the ground hard. The arena fell silent as everyone watched in shock. John stood, panting heavily, feeling the adrenaline course through his veins. Zarkon struggled to get back on his feet, but John saw his chance. "Zarkon, we don't have to fight like this!" John shouted, trying to reach the warrior's heart. "We can find a way to work together." Zarkon hesitated, the fire in his eyes flickering for a moment. But pride and anger surged back as he stood. "I will not be defeated by a human," he roared, launching himself at John once more. This time, John was ready. He sidestepped Zarkon's attack and used Zarkon's momentum against him, grabbing his arm and pulling him down to the ground. Zarkon hit the floor, and John quickly pinned him down, holding him firmly but not aggressively. The crowd erupted in cheers, shocked by the turn of events. John looked into Zarkon's eyes, filled with frustration and disbelief. "This isn't about winning or losing," John said earnestly. "It's about understanding each other. Let's put an end to the fighting and build something better." For a moment, the arena was silent, everyone holding their breath. Zarkon, struggling but not fighting back, finally nodded. "You have shown me strength I did not expect," he admitted, his voice low. With that, John released his hold and the crowd exploded in cheers. He had not only proven himself as a worthy opponent, but had also opened the door to a new understanding between their worlds. The king stepped forward, raising his arms. "Let this be a day of unity. We have much to learn from each other, and we shall do so together." As the crowd cheered, John felt a wave of relief wash over him. He had faced the challenge, turned the tables, and emerged not just as a fighter, but as a bridge between two worlds. Today, laughter turned into respect, and John knew this was just the beginning of a new journey for all.